Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Slow Art Friday. Today is June the 19th. My name is Christy McMillan. I'm Director of Learning and Engagement here at the Asheville Art Museum, and I'm joined by one of our touring docents, Michelle Weitzman Dorf, who will be leading today's Slow Art discussion. Each Friday at 12 p.m. while the museum is closed, docents lead virtual interactive conversations about a few artworks in our collection or special exhibitions. The goal is simple: slow down, discover the joy of looking at art, and talk about the experience with others. For today's program, Michelle will lead us in an interactive conversation about 3 artworks in our collection. We'll spend about 15 minutes or so with each artwork. Michelle will allow us time to look at each work on our own, slowly, before leading a conversation about each one with questions. As participants, we encourage you to engage in dialogue with Michelle, myself, and each other throughout the tour. A few notes before we get started. You probably noticed as you were getting logged in that your microphones and video were muted by default. If at any time you'd like to unmute your video so that we can see who we're talking to, we'd be happy to see you. Some tips. We do recommend to choose a quiet room and close the door. Please do silence any alerts from nearby devices. If you would like to turn on your video, try not to sit in front of a window, lamp, or other strong light source. It just makes it difficult for us to see you. Use headphones and microphone for best sound quality. While you can log in using your smartphone, we recommend using a desktop, laptop, or tablet in order to be able to see the slides and meeting tools on a larger screen. Please make sure that your screen name includes your first name and last initial, or first name and last name. If you're logging in using someone else's account, make sure that the name that pops up underneath your photograph is actually your name and not your friend's. In order to ask questions or make comments throughout the tour, you can unmute your microphone when Michelle asks for questions or comments. Another way is to type your questions or comments into the chat box, and when there's a pause, I will be able to bring those into the conversation. A third way is to raise your hand in the participant sidebar. Michelle or I will call on you and unmute your microphone in order for you to jump in. Because these conversations usually are pretty fast and furious, I would recommend just jumping in when you have a question or a comment. Sometimes when you put your question or comment in the chat box or raise your hand in the participant sidebar, it can take a little while for us to get to you. Finally, we are recording, so if you prefer not to be recorded, please make sure that your video and audio remain muted and use the chat box to submit any questions or comments that you may have. At this point, I'm going to make it so that folks can unmute themselves at will. We do recommend, if you are not actively asking a question or making a comment, that you leave your microphone muted. Before we get started, are there any questions? Okay, Michelle, take away.
Let's see, everybody. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Slow Art Friday. And I'm curious to know if anyone actually had the time to take a look at the artworks that we're going to be discussing today, just to get a read of where people are at with these particular artworks. You can unmute yourself and chime in if you want. And I see some regular Slow Art Friday participants and some new people, so welcome everyone. And I am going to ask Christy to go ahead and put on our first slide. Take a few moments and study this artwork and see what you see. And in a moment, we'll start a discussion. Oh, I know.
Now we can see you, Michelle. Thank you.
Okay, good. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for gallery view and all that stuff. Okay, let me change my options here too. Okay. I'm looking to see gallery view. Hold on, everybody.
That's what I'm trying to do.
I am not able to see everyone yet. Christy, a little help?
You probably won't be able to, Michelle.
Oh, okay. I'm so used to that. All right. Anyway, so let's start. What do we see in this artwork? What's going on here with this little guy?
I definitely see action and motion and movement by the positioning of the arms and the legs and his pointing. And so I'm drawn to the pink by his mouth and the shirt and his eyes.
Okay, so action, pointing. You're drawn to the pink color of his shirt. Okay, very good. Anybody else?
I think his nose is like out of whack. Makes me think of the saying, "Oh, his nose is out of whack." He's like like he's angry with the, with the pointing finger and his nose to the side. It's almost communicating like he's really upset with something.
So he's looking angry. His nose is to the side.
Accusatory pointing.
Right. Okay, good. Who else? How does this guy make you feel?
Kind of threatened.
Hi, Billy.
Hi, he's threatened. No, he's his posture, his stance, his facial expressions are all what I perceive as aggressive.
Okay, so he's looking threatening and aggressive.
I get a sense that he moved very fast to react to something when I look at him, because his nose is kind of left behind in the quick movement, and his eyes also point slightly differently.
Okay, so you're getting that he moved quickly in his finger pointing.
So he may well have been very angry.
Okay, looks like an angry little dude. By the way, just so you know, he is 12.5 inches by 4 by 6.
Is he wood?
He is carved and painted wood, yes. Yes, Stu.
Yeah, someone was commenting that I feel I should get off his lawn. He's threatening.
Or pick up the dog poop left behind by your dog.
Definitely had the demeanor.
The unnatural facial features to me is quite a contrast with the smoothness and naturalness of his body.
Ah, nice comment. Yeah, I noticed that too. Very smooth, the painting of the clothing, and yet there's more detail to the facial features. Yeah.
I can see a collar now in the shirt. It almost looks like the shirt has a collar there. And it almost looks to me like he's saying, like, stop and listen to me. Like he's pointing to someone saying, you stop what you're doing and listen to me. So.
Yeah, definitely he has a lot of attitude, this guy.
Michelle, Judy had commented on his nose being bent out of shape. Judy, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, well, Barbara Pressman, I think, said it, just immediately I thought that this guy is sort of a personification of that expression. His nose has been out of shape. So I don't have a feeling, he does, this work doesn't make me feel anything, but it makes me think about how he's feeling. And he's both comic, I think, and he's a caricature of something that we all really have felt and probably have done. And so I think this is kind of interesting because it's like a moment in time, the sudden, get out of my face, or whatever he's doing, he's the one bent out of shape. And the artist has captured with these really curvy, interesting shapes and the detail on the face, just a moment, a moment of rage. And that's kind of amazing to me that the artist was able to do that.
Wow, some very interesting comments too, to actually be viewing the artwork from the artwork's perspective. Very great.
Sheila had said, he looks like a thug, but a thug wouldn't be wearing a pink shirt.
True that. Any other comments on this artwork before we move to the next one?
It's interesting that he has no hair, and except for like on his eyebrows, and again with the facial distortions, his ears are up by his eyes.
Right. So you're noticing the distortions of his face and the eyebrows, and yeah, no hair.
I'm thinking maybe he's defending the pink shirt. I can wear the pink shirt if I want to.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the chat are saying words like accusatory or confrontational. Catherine C. offers a different reading, and perhaps she'd be willing to unmute her microphone and talk a little bit more about this. She says, maybe he's just intensely pointing while dancing. Look at his shoes.
I got the feeling that he was kind of like a salsa dancer, like in the middle of a cha-cha-cha and leaning back and pointing at his partner possibly. But that was just my take, so.
Love it. And Barbara P. had sort of along those same lines. She said, maybe he's posturing.
Yeah. I personally, I love his stance. I love the action in his whole body. I love the action of his body. And we actually in our collection have another work from this artist, and I invite you to take a look at that. And there is also more information on this particular artist, Sultan Rogers. There's a nice bit of information on Wikipedia. And Christy, if you could show the info slide on Sultan Rogers. And he passed in 2003. And what we're focusing on today, just as a comment, is self-taught art. And this gentleman actually worked in a chemical plant, and he carved these and did that until he passed in 2003. There's a really interesting collection of more figures like this and animals, etc., online, and I think you'll enjoy seeing those. So if you have a chance, take a look. And we're going to move on to our next artwork by Betsy Harvey.
Michelle, do you know anything about where he was from, or what part of the country he lived in? Or
yeah, I believe he was originally Mississippi, and then he ended up in New York. Not exactly sure. It is on Wikipedia. He had actually moved away from his family for a long time to work and make money, and then moved back when he retired.
Okay.
It says
Judy?
he was a, oh,
Judy, sorry, Susan, Judy had her hand up.
all right, that's all right.
I just wanted to ask Michelle if Rogers is one of the quote outsider artists that got discovered. I mean, did he become known as an artist in his lifetime by the mainstream art world?
I didn't. Christy might know more about that. Christy, can you chime in?
I'd say, Judy, I also don't know a lot about Sultan Rogers, but given that we have 2 works by him in our collection, I would say that he was discovered. We have works in our collection. I assume that other museums have works by him in their collections as well, which means that he was sort of brought to the attention of the art world.
Yeah, and I did notice when I was doing research that there are pieces available of his that are somewhere in the area of $300 to $500 currently at auction. So he was pretty prolific in the body of work that he created, and he is in a lot of other museums in his hometown.
Michelle, you had mentioned that we have another work by him in our collection, and I would just point out that I think it's the July 31st Slow Art. Sarah Reinke is leading. We've just posted that on our website, and she has chosen the other one as part
wonderful.
of her her Slow Art. So,
terrific. Okay,
yeah.
great.
Kay had mentioned in the chat box, I don't feel threatened myself, but feel that this man is a danger to someone else. Kay, do you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, I feel like I'm looking at half of a confrontation. I'm sort of outside of it, but he looks sort of dangerous to me. Like I'd see him in on the street, and I would feel like, uh-oh, there's going to be trouble here. So
yeah. So to wrap up on this little guy, he's got a lot of demeanor going on, a lot of attitudes, and creating fear and distance, and all the comments I think have been really great. You've actually opened my eyes to seeing this particular artwork in a different way, so thanks for that. And how about we move on to the next one, Christy? Okay, take a few moments, look at this artwork. You might consider looking corner to corner, side to side. This is an artwork by Bessie Harvey. She passed in 1994. And this particular artwork is 20¼ inches by 11½ by 5 inches. So let's start the conversation with, what materials can you identify?
I see yarn, a lot of yarn there for the hair and the curly hair on top. And I definitely think I see some sort of plastic by the red, maybe.
Rope.
Okay, rope, yarn, maybe plastic.
Maybe metal.
Perhaps metal.
Lynn says gaskets.
Gaskets for the eyes? Huh, that could be.
I'm wondering if there's some sort of organic, like stems of plants that have been painted, but it's hard to tell.
Right, stems of plants that are painted, yes. The black and white, for example, is that what you're speaking to?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. Anyone else on the material?
Lynn said wood.
I'm not sure.
It's cold.
Yeah, it's actually, it's an assemblage on wood, meaning a mixture of material. And what's going on in this artwork? What emotions are you feeling from this?
Well, it definitely has a mask, like, I mean, it's created as a mask.
Yeah.
But the mouth, to me, the red across the bottom is the most dramatic part of the work.
So you think that the mouth, the red mouth, is the most dramatic and eye attention grabbing?
Well,
Okay.
is it smiling or threatening?
What do you think?
I see it as a smile, but the eyes are not smiling. So it's definitely a piece that you have to take a lot of time, in my opinion, to look at.
Interesting. I think it's smiling too. That's how I see it.
I think with the eyes and the mouth together, it's a happy expression with a smile and wide-eyed, and I mean, it looks like a mask, but it looks like a happy mask.
Well, Laurel thinks it's a happy mask.
I see it as a voodoo doll waiting to
Okay.
be punctured by some pin or something.
Okay.
Almost like a proscenium mask of some kind, right? But in a very quaint, homemade, handmade way. But there's also kind of a Medusa element to it. When I first looked at it, I saw more of a Medusa. The more time I spent looking at it, I could see it as a proscenium, piece of a theater.
Very cool. I understand the Medusa part. What's the proscenium? I'm not familiar with that.
The happy, the comic or the crying faces of either the drama or the comedy, the tragedy or the comedy. It to my mind has a little bit of that.
Okay.
I see that black and white thing going up and down the face or the surface of the mask almost looks like a snake to me. Yeah. And so I get a feeling of maybe the face is frozen, like it's got this frozen smile and this thing is crawling over it. I don't know. That's what it looks like to me.
So the black and white, what was identified earlier as possibly a painted branch, looks like a snake to you. And
it just doesn't look like part of the face itself.
Doesn't look like part of the face. Yeah, I can see that.
I find.
What do you think about the hair?
I think
on top of the hair. What do you think that's about?
I think
Laurel, you were going to make a different comment. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say with the eyes, the way the one piece of the yarn there is in front of the one eye. The other eye is filled in with black, and the reverse eye has that piece of hair in front of it. And we've talked about before that when artists do things, there's no mistakes or unintentional. They purposely do that. So I found that very interesting, that piece of hair in front of the eye that way.
Good catch.
The proscenium approach, I think, is a very interesting one because I can see, the more I look at it, the almost two faces.
Yeah, that comment has us looking at this mask in a different way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Michelle, Susan C. had commented about the previous artwork and this artwork looking ghost-like to her. Susan, do you want to elaborate on that at all? Susan, you're muted and I can't unmute you. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
I had looked up at the other fellow that we looked at, the man who might be dancing, and he was a folk art artist from Mississippi, and he called his artwork haints. And I'm like, what's a haint? So I looked up. It's a Southern colloquialism, and it has to do with apparition, ghosts, that type of thing, and or lost souls. And when I looked at this one, that's the first thing that I thought, that it may be in honor of someone who he's remembering, or something like that.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Stu.
No, that's okay. I didn't really have anything else to say. I just, it just struck me the minute I saw this, that maybe it was a way to honor somebody or remember somebody who's no longer with us. And it's a very interesting sculpture.
And you know, that might actually tie into Laurel's earlier comment about the yarn hair over the eye. Perhaps this person, when they were living, that was part of their look. Perhaps.
Yeah, I think it also has dreadlocks, I believe.
Well, and my husband just pointed out that the very top of it looks like a man's haircut in a flat top. So it maybe not just one gender.
Okay. Stu, you have a question? I mean, a comment?
Yeah, I'm noticing the yellow gesture of what might be a nose, yet behind it looks like a black rose. I'm not sure what it is from my inability to see it clearly, but it almost looks like a black rose, which evokes feminineness to me within this whole thing.
Yeah.
So you're seeing a feminine aspect to this, where the black behind there could possibly be a rose.
Yeah, especially with the red lipstick type mouth, very red.
Yeah. Yeah.
Judy?
What interests me a lot about this is that, you know, when I see this as an abstraction of a face. And when I think about abstracting a face, I mean, when I imagine, like, what would I imagine an abstract face to look like? I think of it more in terms of planes and profiles and shapes. And this artist has done it all out of lines, or most of it, you know, out of lines and circles and different kinds of lines, curly lines, by using these different materials. And I just think that's a really clever and interesting and different way to show an abstraction of a face.
Interesting observation. And, you know, that speaks to, you know, artists using shapes in their artworks. And it's a nice pointing out. Thanks, Judy.
Barbara P. had made a comment over in the chat box. You know, we've talked a lot about this looking like a mask, but Barbara had pointed out it felt to her like a face that was unmasked. Barbara, do you want to expand on that?
I feel that it has a lot of emotion in it, and while it might be covering something up, I feel like it's exposing a vulnerability. They talked about happy and sad. I don't see happiness in this, but I feel like a lot of emotion. And I feel like, and thank you for telling me about the flower. That even makes me feel more like there's some thought, there's something behind all of this mask. The artist put some emotion into it. And I'm not sure what it is, but it doesn't look like a mask to me.
Interesting. You know, now that you make that comment, Barbara, so now how I'm looking at it, as I'm seeing the color on the front of the mask, and then inside I'm seeing the black. So it's kind of like the mask that we wear is more colorful to, you know, to the outside, and yet inside, perhaps they're actually feeling more dark. Just when you made that comment, that's what I saw right away.
Well, you put it in words very well, Michelle, because that was kind of what I was feeling. There's something inside. So that's why I think it's unmasked, because you're seeing something within the face.
Right. So almost a holistic version of this entity.
I think this is an African-American artist, so I wouldn't necessarily read the black as dark.
Okay, good point. She is an African-American artist.
And Judy, you had also pointed out in the comments that if this were a mask that could be worn, that the person who was wearing it, their actual face would show through.
Yeah.
There was a question, Michelle. Elaine had asked, what what is this material on the top? Billy, I think it was you that had pointed out that sort of looked like it could be a man's haircut. So there's a whole sort of sub conversation over in the chat box about, is it a male or a female? But Elaine had asked specifically, do we know what this material is here at the top?
You know, I don't remember seeing this artwork in person, and the description that we have is assemblage on wood. So I'm not exactly sure. To me, it looks like some type of painted surface. And to speak earlier to the person who thought that the black and white was a branch, it looks like it could possibly be wood pieces that were then painted over, because it looks like glossy, like acrylic type of paint to me. But I don't have the actual listing of what the mask is created with.
It is wood. It's sort of tree branches all put together.
Okay.
You can kind of see at the top the slices of the where it was cut
off. Yeah.
It's vegetative. I mean, it's almost as if it's some kind of Irish Druid. This kind of partly organic, partly human, partly spirit. This kind of amalgamation of different beings in a way. I mean, it's almost as if the flesh is dissolved, and what you have are some ligaments, some bone residue, but there is a kind of an interesting abstraction to it.
Yeah, definitely some abstraction to it, and it looks like it could actually be from various ethnicities. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought of the Druids, but I can see that. And so Bessie Harvey, there's, again, information online, because there's information online about everything. And what I read about her, like many self-taught artists, Bessie claimed to get her inspiration from God. And so many of the artists that that's in the museum's collection, who are self-taught artists, their inspiration is God. God speaks to them. They feel that the reason that they're here is to express the love of God. And I found that very interesting about her particular work. And she's among a community of self-taught artists who feel this way and who get their inspiration from God. So I thought that was interesting. And again, nice little bio on her online, not on Wikipedia, but just online, easy to find.
Michelle, Stan had a comment or a question. He asked the eye on the right side, and I assume you're talking about this one, Stan. He said it seems to him that it has a face on it. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
No, what I noticed when I was looking at it, it could have been the photographer, or it could be intentional that the artist had the eyes be particularly reflective, so that a person could say, maybe he's looking into my own soul. I don't know, but I thought it was interesting.
Thanks.
I noticed that it's not dated, and I've seen that recently on a lot of art pieces. Do we know why so many artists don't date their pieces? Do they think they're timeless, or do we just not know the date?
We just don't know the date, Laurel.
Okay.
There's no date that's inscribed on the artwork itself. It looks like we purchased this at some point in 2011. And Michelle, I believe you said that she passed away in 2003. Is that what you said?
No, Bessie passed away in 1994.
Oh, okay. So much earlier than that. So it came into our collection then about 17 years after she passed. And so there was no way for us to go back and ask Harvey what what the date was or an approximate date for this artwork. I think that you'll see that a lot, Laurel, in works by self-taught artists, that there's not necessarily a cataloging process, or a lot of times they're not signed or dated in the same way that artists who maybe have come through an art establishment and have been taught that that's important. That, just as Michelle said, you know, they're making art for different reasons, many of which are very, very personal. And so, you know, putting their name on it or putting a date on it is probably far less important than the actual process of making it itself. Marie had said in the chat that she feels like this has a Mother Nature effect or a Mother Nature feeling. Do you want to talk about that, Marie?
Well, what I meant from that was just hearing that, seeing the different pieces, certainly different pieces from Mother Nature. The curly aspects look like they're different shavings of wood. And hearing that, so different pieces of wood, it just seems like there are different parts of Mother Nature that were used to be able to put this together.
Again, another commonality of self-taught artists is that they use a lot of things from their personal environment. So very good observation. Any other comments before we move on to our last and final piece for today? Okay, let's have that slide, Christy, please. Once again, take a moment, look at the artwork, see what you see.
Michelle, I think this is the first Slow Art Friday where it was all three-dimensional objects. So I wish that we had multiple views so that people could see, you know, you had asked me earlier if I had ever seen the back of this particular artwork, and I haven't seen it in person. Perhaps we could get some more views so that, you know, as long as we're going to stay in a virtual realm, people can have the experience of being able to walk all the way around something like they normally would in the galleries.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Even when people are looking on the, you know, online on the collection, just to be able to view it around, you know, like the glass articles that we have as well. Get that perspective. Okay, so now that we've had a chance to take a look at this, what is this? What do you think?
It's a pinch pot.
Okay. Anyone else? What do you see in this pinch pot?
You almost see, I almost see two faces once again, because of the difference in the eyes and also the difference in the hands. Right. So you're noticing on each side of the pinch pot that the eyes and hands look different, so it gives the appearance of two faces. Okay. And since you mentioned pinch pot, I will tell you that this pot is 4.5 by 6.5 by 5 3/4. So it is quite small. Mm-hmm.
Judy remarked on the features that were also distorted. I think you were probably thinking back, Judy, to the Sultan Rogers, the first artwork that we looked at, but you said that this one was cute. I guess it had a different feel to it for you than the Sultan Rogers.
Yeah, I think this is adorable. I mean, even though if I look at the features individually, the mouth looks like it doesn't look cute and adorable and friendly, and neither of the eyes do. But all together, and with the arms coming around to sort of embrace its own face, it gives off this air of humor and sort of adorable humanness to me. Little projection or something going on there, but
Very interesting. So, because in the chat box, somebody was saying that this little pot looks ill.
My first impression, also, I agree with Judy, was cute. It just stood out with the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the smallness of it. And I found the shading and coloring to be intriguing, from the dark to the light, almost sort of like when we look at a black and white picture versus a picture in color. And it just kind of is sitting there with these colors. And I agree, just kind of cute.
I think Kay Dunn is on the same wavelength as you guys. She had said that this one has a sense of vulnerability to it. You want to talk about that, Kay?
Yeah, it's, I think people have said it's not the most attractive face, but it's a face that you want to sort of take care, you feel like you might want to take care of this little creature, perhaps.
Barbara P says he looks, the face looks almost childlike, that the teeth look like baby teeth to her.
I know you're not supposed to touch artwork, but if I saw this, I would want to pick it up. That would be my opinion.
Yeah.
Laurel, make sure that I know you're coming when you come to the museum so that I can walk around with you and make sure you don't touch.
No, it's a no-no.
Yeah, Christy is very particular that we stay a very good, safe distance from all the artworks. That's part of our training, in fact.
Catherine C. in the chat box, Michelle, had an idea about a way that maybe it could be used. Catherine, you had said that it reminds you of a teapot because of the positioning of the arms. Do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. It's just the way that instead of coming up from the bottom, or the fact that even arms are included on what is mostly a headpiece, it just makes me think of I'm a Little Teapot, especially because of the size and the childlike nature of the face and all of that too.
Mm-hmm. You had also made a comment that it reminded you of a doll, which I find a lot of dolls kind of terrifying. And we have a lot of images and dolls in our collection with these sort of scary faces. Being in our collection storage areas can sometimes be a little bit creepy, Catherine. So I think you and I probably are on the same wavelength with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's even the modern iteration of the ugly doll. They're actually called ugly dolls. So it kind of reminded me of that too. But yeah.
I find it so interesting that some people find this to be cute, adorable, childlike, and others scary, ugly, perhaps. And it's just so interesting, the different things that are being evoked in this discussion.
Kat says that it looks a little drunk to her. Kat, do you want to put a new idea forward? Marie says in the chat box that the openness at the top lends to an overall openness, softness to the artwork. Soft is a new adjective that's come up, Marie, if you want to expand on that.
I think the thing for me, I don't find it as ugly, but I think maybe more the childlike, I'm seeing more the childlike features of it. And for me, the openness of everything else, except for the eyes, the nose, and maybe the mouth, everything else is closed off. So the openness at the top for me just kind of helps lends into that softness. So it varies more for childlike to me, softness, innocence, as opposed to ugly.
Softness, innocence, more childlike. Okay.
I have a question about it, and that is, it appears to me as a potter that it's made of a native clay, and my question would be, how would it be different or what would your perception be if it was made from white porcelain?
Well, to speak to the first part of your comment, it is made from native clay. She collected clay from the creek behind her house. So that is a good observation. And that's a good question to pose to the group. What would you think of this artwork if it were white porcelain? How would it look? How would it feel different to you than this, the form it's in now, colorations it's in now?
A white person would be cold. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I
So
think
Billy,
Billy,
I was just going to say that if I imagine this in white porcelain, which usually fires pretty smooth and evenly in color, I would think immediately of like some sort of chamber pot or something. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But someone had put in the chat box that with sort of this, I'm guessing the brown coloration and the sort of earthiness of it, that she thought that it could be used as a planter, that if it was being used in that way, you know, maybe not like a teapot, as Catherine had posited, but if you had something planted in it, that it would look kind of like hair when something was growing out of it. But yeah, I think it automatically became clinical to me when I started to think about it in white porcelain.
I mean,
yeah, I can imagine it with a plant looking like the old chia pets, with the funny faces that chia pets had. Remember that? To me, the white porcelain would have made it almost softer and not as like as we were speaking earlier. You know, he looked a little unwell. I think that it would mask the emotions and the character of this pinch pot.
See, what I see is when I look at this native clay is that the variation in it and the way that it was fired, the color differentiation is really what gives it depth and interest.
Yeah, yeah, the distinction of how it was fired, and it almost looks to me, having a little bit of background, that it was like that wood ash fire.
That's what it looks like.
Right. Okay. And so the reason why it looks like that, actually, I mean, I was observing it, but I just remembered that. So she lived in an area of Appalachia where coal mining was happening. And so she actually, her first pots were fired in like a coal kind of a kiln.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So it very well may be coal ash that we're seeing there. And her art in particular, this is Georgia Blizzard, and she passed in 2002. There's further information on her on Wikipedia. And to speak to Judy's comment earlier about the first artwork, is that she was actually discovered and put in galleries. For her art expressed her memories, surroundings, and religious views, which themes were dark for her. She actually had schizophrenia. So this was, and she lost a lung. So after that occurred and her husband passed, her creating all these hand-built artworks was therapy for her. And they happened to be sold in her daughter's store. It was a souvenir store in Appalachia, and somebody came by who was a gallery owner, and it ended up in Buckhead, Georgia. So she is a known artist. She is collected and in many museums as well. So definitely a place for her to express her emotions and feelings.
Unlike the other two, this one does have a title.
Ah, yes, thank you. I forgot that part. This one is called I Am Just a Little Pebble in the Sand. Also
Yes.
not dated.
Okay.
Hand-built, as all of her works are. Any other last comments or questions on this particular artwork?
I have a
I
question.
have a comment.
Okay, question first, then comment. Who had the
Oh,
question?
Yeah,
Ms. Kay.
I had a question. I don't know anything about pottery, but I was struck by the different coloration of the nose and the bridge of the nose between the brow. Is that something that an artist would see in the material and say, okay, I can use that this way, or is that something that's added later? Do you think that coloration?
Billy, help me out if you want to. In my experience in clay, the clay itself is one color, and then when you fire it, it takes on what the firing materials are in the kiln. So she may or may not have known how the coloring would be in the finished piece.
Well, in my experience, it probably is from the firing, just looking at it. But also, you know, if you think about these artists going out and just digging up dirt in their backyard, that's what this is. This is dirt from her backyard. And think about when you go out and dig in your yard, it's not all the same color. It's not, when we go down and buy clay, like from High Water Clay, it's been prepared and it is very consistent. So it's hard to tell, but my assumption would be that it's from the firing.
Right. And Judy, your comment?
I just wanted to say that all three of these works that you chose feature features that are asymmetrical, and this one especially, it's like the one before it, Bessie
Harvey.
Harvey. I think it's just brilliant. I mean, I have to say, I looked at these works and I thought, oh yeah, they're interesting, but actually looking at them closely, I think they're so amazing because like with this one too, the choice of the tiny little eye that's just a hole, and then the bigger eye that actually looks like an eye, and then the mouth that could be raggedy teeth next to this hand that's barely just with three lines carved out. I mean, the asymmetry and the different styles that are used, I think make this piece have so much character. And likewise to Bessie Harvey. That's all.
Okay. Well, thank you for that comment. So that you know how I selected these, I'm fascinated to hear all these things. What Christy said, that they're all 3D. Judy, what you're saying. The reason why I actually chose these is because these are, or had been, some of my personal least favorite artworks in the collection, and I wanted to get a different perspective. So,
oh, good.
Yeah. So, and it just, it's so great that I know that, you know, we're all experiencing this time in our lives very differently, but I will say that one of the silver linings is to be able to take the time and have a discussion about an artwork for a length of time and getting so many perspectives. And I so appreciate everyone's participation today and commentaries and thoughts. And as I close with my other slow art tours, I will say to you that art is an expression, creative inspiration in form. Artists create their own language. You don't have to know what the artist meant specifically. What there is to do is to engage with the art, which is what we've done today. And I thank you for joining us today and participating in the conversation. Christy has some comments to make before we close, and I wish you all a really great afternoon.
I love, love, love the fact that the reasoning behind you choosing the ones that you did was because they were your least favorites. You know, I think that usually when we're giving tours in the museum, we pick the things that we like the most because they make us excited and we want other people to be excited about them. And, you know, I say this always in docent training or to groups when I'm here at the museum that, you know, it doesn't matter to me whether I like something aesthetically or not, whether I would want to have it in my house. I think that we all are always working for a level of appreciation for something, even if that appreciation isn't aesthetic, that we can appreciate sort of, you know, artists working out of their homes using the materials that are at hand to express themselves, or whether it's something that is, you know, absolutely the epitome of, you know, human creativity. You know, there's a wide range in between, but if we can find some sort of way to appreciate what we're looking at, that we can, you know, find value in art. So I just loved your reason for choosing. Thank you, Michelle, for being brave and choosing those things, because I think that now, even if, again, we wouldn't have these artworks in our home, we still might have an appreciation for them. And thank you. I love that. Now I'm going to be thinking about that, about why I choose the things that I do.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So Michelle and everyone, thank you so much for joining in today. It's always a pleasure to spend my Friday lunchtime with you all. I you know, look forward to seeing the familiar faces, but also the folks that join in, you know, week by week, who are new, that might just be really interested in the topic or be inspired or curious about the artworks that the docents have selected. So thanks for coming today. Next week, the topic is the land of the sky, and that is a slow art that's going to be led by our master docent, Sarah Reinke, and she's chosen images of artworks that have very prominent skies. I also think it was an interesting title for the Slow Art Friday, since Western North Carolina is often called the land of sky. So we look forward to seeing you again. If you'd like to sign up for next week's Slow Art Friday, please send me a short email and I will get you on that list. Otherwise, have a fantastic weekend and we look forward to seeing you again. Take care.